So for my project, what I planned to do was reorganize and merge out everything that was in the back storage room of my store at Big Five. This is because over the course of the last 2 years that I had worked there since the beginning of February 2018, um, the storage room was in disarray. It had things all over the floor, items that weren't supposed to be back there, and it really it just hindered daily operations of the store. Like our inventory truck was ran through the back room, and so you couldn't even walk down the aisles and get boxes and what you needed to the appropriate locations that it needed to be. So that's the reason why I decided that the idea for my project would be to make sure that this back room was up to not only my standards, but the standards of the rest of the company, because I had been to other stores and how it looked back there was far different than what it had looked like at my store. So for this project, what I plan to do what I did do was I asked my store manager for a total of 96 store hours. And so these 96 store hours were spread out between me and two other employees who would be under my supervision for the duration of the product. So we started the project, I believe, the weekend of February the 14th, and we worked Saturday and Sunday, all three of us, 8 hours each day. And so for that first week, the main thing that we focused on was reorganizing all of the shoes. And now, sorry, that may not sound like a lot, but for Big Fives, the shoes are like the main selling point for the store. And so what that means is there are over thousands of individual shoe boxes that are that had to be reorganized, and this was no small task. These rows of shoes take up 75% of the back room. They're ginormous shelves that just hold boxes upon boxes. They're organized from casual, hiking, running, hunting, all at work, and we have them all for men's, women's, and kids. We also have cleats and slide sandals. So it was a very enormous project, and it took quite a large amount of time. But that's what we were able to do the first week, and we did quite a good job. It took the entire time, and I had to finish it up myself during the week on an extra shift. But overall, we had completed everything that we had planned on completing for that week. So for the second weekend, we worked another 48 hours combined, 24 each day between the three of us. And what we focused on that week was not only cleaning up everything off the ground, because it's at times impossible to get around things unless you're literally climbing over them, and that just isn't okay. But we cleaned things off the ground, and we went through all the boxes that we had, and we reorganized and we merged them. And so this consisted of going through hundreds of boxes, looking at thousands of items, placing SKUs on them where they had gotten ripped off, the little barcodes that you scan. And so that way everything was easier for everyone in the store, and that way we would be able to just help the customers as effectively as we could. So we went through all the boxes, rearranged all the boxes according to make, model, what season they'd be used in, winter, summer, spring, all of that kind of things, and just by like a general description of what they are, and make sure they were with everything else that was similar to them. And this really this really did a lot for us, and it took the entire time, but it was well worth every second that we took. So The reasoning is why the things we did were important, and because first off, the shoes, they're just one of our main sellers, and then secondly is that we had to merge the stuff and make sure it was better, and to measure the success of what we did and just to show the effect of it, the first thing that I looked at were our inventory audits. And so our inventory audits are basically they're the corporate, like my boss's way of seeing how effectively the store is being ran. And so to get a passing score on the inventory audit, you need above a 90%. And in the 2 years that I had been working there, I don't believe that we had an inventory audit that was above 70%. So because of this, I used it as a benchmark for the first benchmark for what I could use to consider my project a success. So these inventory audits take place about every 3 months. So the first one of this year was going to be taking place in March, beginning of March. And so that's why I set my project for starting in mid-February, and then the 2 weeks leading up to March, that first week of March. That way, you know, our back room would be, and our store as a whole, would be at its best for when that audit did come. So when the time for the audit came, we actually did score. I believe it was like a 91 or 92%. Passing is 90. And so this was the first time that we had received a passing score since I had been there. The back room had only received a deduction of, I believe, about 1 point. So we were only counting for about 1% of loss in that inventory audit, which is quite a success in at least my eyes, and it was a success in the eyes of my store manager, as well as some of the corporate managers that had come in to perform the audit. The next measure of success that I looked at to see if my efforts had actually helped the store were our sales figures when compared to each other from last year's to this year's, because our store does keep the sales figures for last year week by week, day by day actually. So that way they're easily comparable to see how the company is doing in the next year. So when looking at this measure, the project does seem somewhat unsuccessful. However, we're just gonna look at the numbers first. Last year, the first 2 weeks of March 2019, the company was averaging over $10,000 a week in sales. So just over $1,500 a day. And that was for 2 consistent weeks. However, when we are looking at the sales figures for the first 2 weeks of March this year, there is a significant decrease in the amount of sales that are gained actually. So from first glance, it could be perceived that this project, or by that measure at least, was unsuccessful. However, when we're looking at sales, we're looking at how easily the customer is able to find the product and how easily we're able to help them. And in those 2 weeks, I did notice that customers were easily able to find their items. And when we went into the back room, instead of like, oh yeah, we're never gonna find this, we were able to actually locate what we were looking for, the customers were looking for, and we were able to make that sale. And so that's why although we were averaging around 8,000, I'd say $8,300 for the 2 weeks of 2020, I would view this as a success because there is an important factor to take into account, and that is COVID-19. Right around these times that I was taking these numbers here in the Bay Area, panic, I would say, had already begun to set in, and just the populace, and because that foot traffic in many places began to slow down, I noticed a significant decrease in people already coming into my store. It's pretty easy to notice when there's not a lot as is, but and so because of that, I think it's only natural that many places just around, the U.S. and California, the Bay, and definitely the Bay Area are seeing a significant decrease in their sales. So while there was a solid decrease in the sales, I don't necessarily believe that measure, just simply due to the time we were going through, I don't think that measure is accurate in saying that my project was not successful. And while not an actual measure of my success, one thing I did take into account to kind of help measure it was employee morale. Before we had worked on the back room, just a consensus, at least between the part-time employees, the people who were the sales crew, the cashiers, anyone really but the managers. Sorry. Anyone but the managers, the employee morale was low, and no one really wants to work in a store where you have to climb over boxes to get to things, or you're always having to tell customers that you don't have something, even when you didn't look, just because you knew you weren't going to find it. But with what we did, we were able to change the atmosphere there, at least for a while. People were more I wouldn't say excited, but more encouraged to actually try and help these customers find what they were looking for, because it was much easier for them. And instead of having to try, they could just go back there and they already knew where everything should be, and it was like it was supposed to be. So I was definitely able to see a boost in employee morale, and although no, it's not an actual factor, I think, it is a good measure of our success. The only problem with that measure is that if people do not continue the work that we did, you're just going to see all these things continue to slip. So, just going to conclude, start my conclusion now. This product was extremely important for my store, as it helped boost employee morale. I think in a time of a non-mass pandemic, it would also boost the sales, and it definitely did show an impact with our inventory audit, and it helped to build a better relationship with our corporate, because we were seen as one of the worst stores in the area, but slowly making improvements. I think it's important that not only the managers of the store, but the other employees as well, to continue, not with this project that I did, but just continue to upkeep. So that way, like a task like this doesn't have to necessarily be taken care of again. And I think that that's an important job of the management. This project, and it taught me the importance of not only leadership, but just it taught me the importance of leadership and delegation, because you can lead, but you're not always going to be there to take care of everything for yourself. So it's important to have those people that you can trust in order to take care of these things. All right, thank you.